since 2021. We have about 13 coaches around the country, a lot in the state of Florida, mainly guys that play Division 1, under, at like Alabama, Purdue, Western Michigan, just a collection of guys that just really enjoy ball. They want to stick around the game, and have the ability to, help the youth kind of grow up and get recruited and get taught the right things and that kind of stuff. And so on our side, like, I don't know everything, you know what I mean? I just want to be able to give our guys as much information as possible. And so we have talked over, parents have reached out to me and said, hey, how do we get recruiting? How do college coaches evaluate guys? And so that's kind of where this whole interview process kind of sprung to mind, where it's like, hey, why not reach out to some of these active college quarterback coaches, pick their brain around how they evaluate guys, what they look for from a recruiting standpoint, et cetera, et cetera. Post it on our social media channels so that way parents can understand and get a better learning from that, and help their sons be able to leverage that information appropriately. So that's kind of the genesis of this call, Coach. And like I said, I appreciate you taking the time. So I have a couple questions, if you don't mind me firing away, unless you want to start.
No, that's great. Go ahead. Fire away.
Awesome. Yeah. So obviously you've been the quarterback coach at Lafayette for a couple of years, previous to that at Monmouth. So when you evaluate from a recruiting standpoint, when you evaluate quarterbacks, what are the two most important physical attributes that you look for when you kind of go through their tape?
Well, you're talking just
Just
physical, right?
physical, just
Okay.
physical.
Yeah, because obviously there's some things that I prioritize over that. But if we're just talking physical, yeah, I think being able to get the ball out quickly is important for our offense. We're a heavy run pass option offense, so being able to get the ball out quickly, and then you know it's tough. It's hard. Like obviously you prioritize arm strength, you prioritize accuracy, but you can't get that on film. So like when I first watch a film, and we're just talking evaluating film, it's can he get the ball out quickly? Because I feel like I can get a good feel for that. And what's your running level ability? You don't have to be Lamar Jackson, but can you be Daniel Jones, Joe Burrow, like type of thing?
Absolutely. Do you have so when you evaluate your cues, do you have for example, like their 40 time, or are you looking at their 10-yard split? Are you saying like, hey, we need to have a guy that's like below a 4.8, or is it kind of just how they move on film and you're
It's
establishing
really just
that?
it's really just information. It's not ever like, hey, you have to be below this. It's just information. It's a teetering act, right? If at our like if you can throw it really well, like 10 out of 10 well, but you can't run it, like
Absolutely.
where do you find it? But hey, maybe I throw it decent and I run it decent. Where's that balance? And I think, we would rather a guy that can run it a little bit and maybe sacrifice a little bit of arm uh, for it. Hopefully, you don't sacrifice a little bit of arm, but usually at our level, you're going to sacrifice something.
Sure.
You might take a 5'9" quarterback because he can run and throw really well, but that's why you get him because he's 5'9". Um, and Yeah, I forget what the beginning part of that question was.
Just the two physical attributes. So which you nailed on that front. So from a soft skill perspective, what do you look for in your quarterbacks? It sounds like you kind of value that a little bit more than the hard skills that, in your QB room.
Yeah, that's the toughest thing to factor in and to find. But in talking with the high school head coach, I think really matters, and the people around him. You find out if one, the kid has elite work ethic, because every kid works hard. There's not like somebody's gonna come in. Well, yeah, I guess there are some kids that you could be like, don't work hard, but for the most part, a high school coach is not going to tell you like this kid doesn't work hard. But there's levels to it. So is he the best worker on your team? Is he top two, top three, or is he top 10? And because for me, like the quarterback has to be one of the in the upper 5% of the team in his work ethic ability, because he's got to watch extra film, he's got to do that, and people have to see that in him. So work ethic is probably one. Competitiveness is number two. We had a kid, Dean DeNoble, who just played for us the last 3 years, and Dean came out of high school, and Dean's a great story. Dean didn't have any scholarships out of high school. He walked on here, and was the fifth string quarterback at the end of his freshman and fall year. And by game two of his sophomore year, well, he redshirted game two of his second year here, he was the starter. So, he worked and worked, and he was just his best attribute. He was so competitive. And he wasn't the most talented, but he was just so competitive.
So what are the things that Dean did? That's actually one of the talking points I had or questions I had. What are the things that Dean did that spring year of his freshman year to kind of elevate his game from, as an incoming freshman, going through that freshman year, getting redshirted, and then obviously taking the reins as a sophomore? What are the things that he kind of did that you noticed in that 8 to 10 month period prior to that second game of his sophomore year?
I think you can tell when kids come back from home from the first break from home after being a freshman, how they come back and the focus that they have. Like there's a few kids you can tell that are different and have like, all right, me being on scout team this year was fun, but like that isn't happening again. So they come back with this focus that, hey, I'm going to be different. And like I can see it in our guys now who just got back. You can see a handful of guys that you're like, okay, he's got that look about him. Dean had that look about him from the moment he got back. He gained weight, he got stronger, and he learned the offense. Like that was his biggest crush coming in is he didn't pick up the offense as quick as another guy that we had. So, that's what sort of held him back. But he learned the offense and got to know it very well.
Is that the kind of thing that you see in the majority of your freshman quarterbacks? So, like for example, I know you guys signed Eddie Jordan out of Beachside High School here in North Florida. Is the biggest concern trying to get them up to speed from a knowledge perspective, or how do you kind of be able to measure that? When you start to recruit these guys on their overall football knowledge, you put them on the board when they recruit the whole gamut.
Yeah, it's very difficult for a freshman to play, obviously at quarterback for sure. For us, like we played a freshman our first year here in 2022 because everybody was a freshman.
Sure.
It was a new system, so there wasn't an older guy that had been in the system before. So um, I think it is very hard to play as a freshman, but you don't really get to see who they are until they learn the system, and that takes time. And really what it does is it takes reps. I think anybody can learn our system in a short amount of time. It's just a matter of when you come in as a freshman, most schools have 4 or 5 quarterbacks. And unless some kid has completely proven himself to not be a guy ever, it's hard to come in and just say, hey, this freshman is going to get reps because we want to see what he's like. One, because it affects the 10 other guys around him. And two, it's what's it say to your kid who's been working for you for 2 or 3 years? Um, Now, you want the best guy and you will always play the best guy, but uh, it's a reps thing. That's all it is for freshmen coming in is are you coming into a situation where like, hey, you got a really good chance to play, or are you coming into a situation where they have some guys to play and you're going to learn it from watching for a year?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you guys have a pretty senior level quarterback group, you know what I mean? At least from a rising perspective, heading into 26, with obviously with Eddie coming in as a true freshman. How are those guys going to be able to differentiate themselves, when they kind of go into fall camp? And maybe if it's even in the spring ball, right? Like what are the things that they're going to have to do on the field to be able to say, hey, like I'm actually the guy that should play this fall.
It's just consistency and a matter of they all have ability. They all have the ability to win us games. They all have the ability to win us a conference championship. There's not a doubt in my mind. I think it's just the consistency of execution over time. Like like I just said, like those guys have not got a ton of reps because Dean has taken the majority of reps over the last 3 years. So they will get their chance this spring, and somebody will be more consistent than somebody else, and that'll probably give us our answer.
So is it more on your guys' front when you guys evaluate who should be playing? Is it more of a, hey, he's from a from a basically a rules perspective, he's following every rule that we have in the quarterback room, not turning the ball over, being consistent, making the right play? Or is it how do you balance that with like maybe a guy that wants to be a little bit more aggressive, wants to be explosive, throw the ball down the field, and maybe he throws a pick? Where do you kind of find yourself in that sliding scale of, hey, maybe this guy isn't as explosive. Maybe he doesn't throw the ball down the field as much, but he completes, he moves the ball. We get in the red zone a ton with him versus a guy that might be a little bit more on a gunslinger standpoint on that side of the scale.
Yeah, you just want a guy that's going to play within the system, and when the system breaks down, he's able to make a play. I always like if you call 10 plays, maybe six of them work out and sort of happen the way you think they do and will, and then four of them the quarterback has to ad lib or change or do those things. And that's where I think sometimes the separation is like in those 6 plays, is he doing what's asked of him? Is he completing the ball? Is he uh you know, are we having success? And then those other 4 plays is kind of what sets you apart. And you can be a gunslinger, if you are turning the ball over, but you're throwing 3 touchdowns to every interception, that's something that's positive. So I don't necessarily have like a gunslinger can't play or like we're gonna play the safe kid. At the end of the day, I think it comes down to consistency, doing what we ask, and then in those plays where it doesn't happen as planned, somebody misses a block or somebody runs the wrong route, like how do you react?
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a ton of sense. The from a just kind of going back to the recruiting standpoint, when you look at these high school quarterbacks, is there something that you're like, man, I really wish more quarterbacks would show this, whether that's on tape or whether that's through conversation that you have with their coaches or players when you're visiting those high schools? Is it a throw that you're like, man, I just don't see 10-yard out routes getting thrown anymore? Like, is there something that you look for that you're like, wow, like this really, really makes us need this kid if you hear or see a certain attribute or physical game tape?
I think it's an overall variety. Some kids are locked into the system they play, and maybe all they do is throw a post ball. So that's sometimes tough to evaluate. Or if they're under center and they're doing certain things, like that's tough for us to evaluate because it's not what we do. I think the more variety you can have on your tape, and obviously, best plays first, all that good stuff. But the more variety for us, for me, it's good to see that you have um, reps under the hood. And what that means is like, hey, you have some RPO experience for us. And even I think a kid that, and I don't want any quarterbacks to transfer in because they're not throwing the ball enough because I don't like that either. But I think when you see a kid that drop backs and throws a lot, like, it's a reps thing.
Absolutely.
If you are dropping back and throwing the ball a lot, like you're going to throw an interception. You're going to learn from that interception. When you throw the ball 12 times a game, you don't have that experience. You don't have oh, what if the DN drops and I wasn't expecting that. Whereas the kid that throws it 50 times a game, he has a much better idea where people are at.
Yeah, absolutely. From an evaluation standpoint, you get how do these kids come on your radar in the first place? Like a guy like Eddie Jordan, obviously he's down in Florida. How did he get on your radar with you guys being up in Pennsylvania on that front? And why is it, how do other quarterbacks get their name known to you that might not be the 4 or 5 stars that the Penn States of the world, that the Alabamas of the world are going after?
I think Eddie's unique, and I'll get into his story in a second. We will start always locally. Like I'll watch the best quarterbacks within a 4-hour radius, because ideally we get a guy from that area, because I think the likelihood and the meaning of the Lafayette education and the degree means a lot. So when we recruit a quarterback, I want him to stay, and I believe that if we get a guy that's familiar with the school and is from around here, we are more likely to get him to stay. Regardless of some of his success. So that's, I think, this day and age when you're recruiting and the portal's around, like that's something that I probably focus more heavily on, is trying to get a local guy. Now, Eddie ironically kind of falls into that. So he's from Maryland. I met him when he was a sophomore down at Wake Forest camp. And at that point, he had, Arizona. I don't know if Wake actually offered him, but he had a couple BCS offers. So I just said, hey, good luck to you. And like, we'll keep in touch, like just kind of saying, all right, maybe it'll work out. And then, some of those offers fell through for him, and his junior came along and he was still around. And his dad, being from Maryland, ironically knew Brian Bosher, who is an offensive lineman. His father has a quarterback uh, factory down in Maryland that Eddie was a part of. So that was part of the recruiting process as well. So even though on paper it looks like, hey, you're taking Eddie Jordan from Florida, Eddie Jordan had a lot of ties to Lafayette, and that was really important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were able to kind of see him live at the Wake Forest camp. Did he end up coming up to you at one of Lafayette's summer camps, or was your only experience with him at that Wake Forest camp, maybe seeing him at a game day, in the fall and or just on tape?
Yeah, that was it.
Nice.
I went to see him play this year, but by that point we had already offered him and did those things. So it was really off the Wake Forest camp and then his junior year film that we decided to offer him.
Absolutely. So how important is it to you to make sure you see these guys and meet them, shake their hand, get them on campus to be able to just really just see them throw live? Or is that, with the transfer portal now and everything like that happening, is that not as important and you're kind of going off of more what you see on tape, more what, their coaches are saying, or maybe their college coaches are saying, et cetera?
I think it's very important to see him throw live. That's what we're going to try to do with every high school players. We're going to see him throw live first. It's it's just there's some things can look good and you just want to most 9 out of 10 times it's confirmed what you saw in film shows up, but you just want to make sure that you confirm it. You have time to do it. The only unfortunate thing now that you deal with is with the recruiting process being a little bit sped up is, all of a sudden a guy gets an offer that, hey, whose film you really liked, and then he has 8 offers, and all of a sudden you're not offering because you want to see him throw. And that's sometimes your hand is forced into offering a guy that, hey, goes beyond what you like to do. But most of the time we just, hey, if he gets 8 offers and we haven't seen him throw, then so be it. We may be out of the mix for him.
Sure. And that feels like a lot of coaches just want to see, they want to be able to shake his hand and see what he looks like live and be like, is he actually like 6'3", like it's listed on his profile and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, I think it's the throwing motion. It's like we talked about seeing the release, seeing the arm strength in person is completely different than what you see on film. Accuracy, because it's hard to get accuracy on a highlight film. Every pass is completed. So you want to see it live, and I also think you really want to see the demeanor of the kid and how he is in his workouts.
yeah, so the kids that you maybe evaluated and you were like, hey, this guy, could be a fit for our program, and you ended up moving in a different direction. Was there something that you saw, you were like, hey, like you weren't as accurate, during camp, or hey, like maybe from a leadership perspective that they missed that, incoming guys that can say, hey, I have a really interest in Lafayette College. Lafayette College is interested in me. When I go to camp, I need to make sure I'm dialed in XYZ. Are there certain attributes or certain things that kids need to be aware of on that front?
I think attention to detail on the drills, it's stupid. I don't want to say it's stupid. It's not stupid, but we look at it. When you do a 5-10-5 drill and you're going back and forth, we tell you to touch with your right hand, touch your left hand. That stuff's important to me. Right, wrong, or indifferent. I want to know that you were able to take a quick direction and then do it quickly because I think that translates. So some of those drills that aren't even throwing, we're evaluating how you process information and can you do it quickly. Being in the front of the line, I think is always a benefit. Nobody, it's never a bad thing. And I know every kid like is going to fight for the front of the line when you say that, but being in the front matters. You get noticed more. You see the kids that are pushing for extra reps and really want it, and I think that shows up. Outside of the actual arm strength and what we're doing in drills and that kind of thing. I think those intangibles show up at a camp in person. You can see when I'm talking to the quarterbacks, you'd be amazed at like if you're talking to a group of 15 quarterbacks, there's going to be 3 of them looking off somewhere else. And, does that mean he's a bad player? No, but just not maybe the player we want to recruit.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense in the sense of, I mean, at the end of the day, you're signing the leader of your team, right? You hope, right? And they got to be able to show that level on a field with a bunch of guys that they don't know, because when they walk in the locker room, they're not going to know those guys the first time either, right? So how do they
Yeah.
command respect, which makes a lot of sense. Um, awesome, coach. That's a lot of the questions that I had. Is there anything else that you want to share on your front otherwise, we can kind of wrap this up. And like I said, I greatly appreciate your time.
No, yeah, I'm happy to talk to you. I love talking quarterback play. I love the quarterback position. It's unique, it's special, and I hope that some of what I said helped out a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be interested in hearing from you and saying like, how do we get to Lafayette College this summer, and being able to just be around you and get evaluated by you guys. So, like I said, greatly appreciate you. We'll be in touch, all that kind of stuff, and go from there. So
Let me know if you make it up to any games this year.
we'll do the Lehigh rivalry game as always, Coach. Been there for the last 5 years since I graduated. So was amped up halfway through this one this past
Yeah,
year. So
yeah. This one will eat at me for a little bit, but I always said when I first got here, all I wanted to do was be a part of a Lehigh Lafayette rivalry game where it meant something to both teams, and it did. And so we came out on the losing end, which is unfortunate, but just that experience and being able to be a part of that was special.
that atmosphere that day with an absolute packed Fisher Stadium, with the Patriot League title on the line and two undefeated conference play teams was pretty fun. That was
Yeah,
something to remember. So
yeah,
hopefully we can turn the tides a little bit this year and get the result to flip, but we'll do it and go from there. So
absolutely cool.
awesome.